At the end of a long, narrow, winding lane, there was an old house. And this house was right at the edge of a churchyard. The minister used to live there, but when he got married, his wife wasn't happy. She didn't like hearing that death bell, and she didn't like seeing the lights of the torches as the burials took place at night. And so to keep her happy, they moved. And they bought a house in the middle of the town where she had neighbours rather than gravestones. And the old house was sold to John Poole. He lived on his own. He was a bit of a hermit, and it was said that he was quite miserly as well. Now, it was the custom in those days to bury the dead at night. The men would carry the bodies to the grave, and the boys would shine torches to light their way. And it was noted that whenever there was a burial, John Poole would be seen watching from whichever window gave him the best view. Now it so happened that one old woman died. She wasn't well liked. She was thought to be a witch. She had red eyes and no teeth, and on Hallowe'en she was never at home. But she had left a lot of money to the church. The night of her burial came. There was no wind, there was no rain, but there was no one particularly keen to carry her, and only those absolutely necessary attended. There was no coffin. She was buried in a woolen blanket. And after she'd been laid into the hole, just before the gravediggers threw in the mud on top of her body, the priest took something out of his pocket, something that clinked, and he threw it in on top of her, shouting, "May your money perish with you!" And with that he turned, he put his head in the air, and he walked away, leaving the gravediggers to fill in the hole, lit by the torches of those lads. And all the while, John Poole was stood watching out of one of his bedroom windows. It wasn't long after that he was seen rather more often in town, boasting that he had recently come into rather a large sum of money. And he started to frequent the pub daily, where one of the regulars told him he couldn't imagine living there, living with all those gravestones, listening to that bell, seeing all the torchlights. Why, anything could happen. His imagination would run riot. And the innkeeper asked him what his imagination would tell him. And he said, "I would be worried about any ghosts. Why, they could rattle at the windows and just frighten you." To which John Poole muttered under his breath, "Well, I've never seen anything, and I've never heard anything." And with that, he got up and rather abruptly left and went home. Well, that night, when he got into bed, unusually for him, he was unable to settle. His body wouldn't keep still. His mind kept turning over and over. And after a while, he got out of bed and he walked over to the wardrobe. He opened the door and he took out something that clinked, and he put it into his top nightshirt pocket. And then, rather cautiously, he went and looked out of the window. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those brass figures in church where they have the bodies wrapped in a shroud with rather a curious knot tied over their head. Well, that's exactly what John Poole saw as he looked out of his window that night, coming from the direction of the churchyard that he had frequented really rather recently. Terrified, he darted back into bed and pulled those covers right up to his neck. And he just lay there and lay there. Suddenly, there was a rattling at the windows and a moaning. And as he looked up, he could see the outline of one of those curious heads. There was a figure in the room with him. Dry earth scraped across the floor as that figure made its way in nearer. The chair was scraped aside. "Where is it? Where is it?" squealed that voice in a low, hoarse, dry voice. And as he watched, it moved over to the wardrobe, and he could hear the wardrobe clothes being pushed around as that figure searched and searched. And then the shadow, as it came nearer and nearer to the bed, closer and closer and closer, that figure loomed up in front of John Poole, lying there, looking terrified into those red eyes. "You've got it! You've got it!" called out that voice. And with that, it shot out a dry, skeletal, bony hand, and its long nails scraped across the bedside cabinet. And then it grabbed for his top nightshirt pocket. John Poole lay there, petrified, eyes wide, mouth wide, wide open in a silent scream, a scream of death, never to wake again.